Within 2 minutes, we have to start our meeting.
Hello, everybody. Namaskar.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Hello. Hello, Payal ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
A very good morning to all. I, Mr. Rudranarayan Das, extend my warm welcome to all the participants joining in today's webinar. We have participants joining across the India and abroad as well. The Ranjit Guru Memorial Series of International Webinar is an initiative by the Department of History and Political Science, Jawaharlal Nehru College, Cuttack, in a close collaboration with Center for Adivasi Research and Development, Odisha. It has completed the 24th round of panel discussion very shortly, and the coronavirus outbreak was disturbed everything, including our physical mode of interaction, but the online platform was helped us to stay connected with brilliant minds across the globe. The broad theme of our webinar is Initiative Policy 2020 COVID-19 and Life Practices Beyond Pandemic. The topics of today's sessions are tension relations across the borderline and internal security of India. To enlighten us on the said topics, we have with us eminent personalities, Prof. Aswini Kumar Mohapatra and Mr. Prakash Kumar Mishra, respectively. Now, I would like to I'd like to invite Sharat Chandra Pradhan to carry on the session by giving his welcome address. Over to you, Professor Pradhan.
Thank you, Rudran, for inviting me for welcome address and theme paper presentation. Good morning to all erudite participants and scholarly resource persons from reputed universities and academia. I, on behalf of Department of History and Political Science, Jawaharlal College, Nepal, in the association with CART, welcome you all to this intellectual platform to offer your valuable deliberation on tension relations across the borderline and internal security of India. Friends, today people from every corner of the India, newspapers, national news channels are talking about confrontation between India and Chinese army. The armies of the world's two most populous nations are coming face to face many points. India and China share a border more than 3,440 kilometers, that is 2,100 miles long and have overlapping territorial claims. The poorly demarcated line of actual control separates the two sides. Rivers, lakes, and snow caps means the line separating soldiers can shift, and they often came close to confrontation. The current military tensions is not limited to Ladakh. Soldiers from two sides are also able in Nathulu on the border between the China and the Sikkim. The traditionally peaceful Galwan River has now become a hotspot because it is closest to the LAC, where India has built a road from Cheko River to the Daulat Beg Oldi. Again, the territorial dispute between India and Nepal includes an area of 400 kilometers at the India-Nepal-China Tri-Junction region. The Kalapani, Lipulekha, and the Sistan territory under India control are the bone of conflict between India and the Nepal. Again, friends, India is a world in miniature. India presents manifold diversity in physical and social types, language, customs, and the religion. In spite of the diversity, India discerned a certain underlying uniformity of life from Himalaya to the Cape Cameroon. A celebrated historian can be said no other single country except India carries so many mankind's eggs in one national basket. The spirit of the unity in diversity and integration. But after India got independence, the biggest challenge to our nation state is the protection of physical, political, and cultural identity of the citizens. The internal security threat to the state today is from state and non-state actors and in physical and cognitive domains as well. In the years 2019, the internal security of India threats from the cyber, political warfare, transnational terrorist organizations, water security, social dissension, and the black swan events like coronavirus. The most persistent threat to internal security of India is the issue of the Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir remain a potential platform for adversarial government actors, jihadis, radicals, politically dissatisfied sectors. At the outset, I am immensely thankful to Professor Aswini Kumar Mohapatra, School of International Studies, JNU, and Srijukta Prakash Kumar Mishra, IPS, former DG, CRPF, India, for sparing their valuable time to enlighten the interested elite participants. Also, welcome to all of our participants for joining this discussion. Hope this sessions will add to your information storehouse. Thank you everybody for giving me a opportunity to listen to me. Thank you again. Thank you. Many thanks.
Thank you, Professor Pradhan. Now I would like to welcome Ms. Payal Agarwal to give the brief introduction of the officers.
My warm greetings to one and all. Thanks, Rudra sir, for giving me the pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest for today's lecture. The topic which will be dealt with on today's lecture are much more important and demands more deliberations. For this, we have joined with us two eminent and distinguished personalities who has done extremely excellent work in their field. Our first guest speaker is Professor Aswini Kumar Mohapatra, Dean, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. A very learned intellectual, he has wide experience of more than 20 years in JNU. His areas of specialization includes West Asian and Mediterranean affairs, peace and conflict studies. Besides that, he has a number of publications. He was also a visiting professor at the Chow University, Tokyo, Japan, and European Union visitor to Brussels, participated in the 1999 Conflict Resolution Program in Uppsala University, Sweden, was a state guest of the Republic of Cyprus, and lots more widely acclaimed achievements. This is also my pleasure to announce that he is also a key advisor of the Center for Adivasi Research and Development. Sir, we heartily welcome you for today's lecture. Sir, your topic as suggested by you is tension relations across the borderline. Our next guest speaker is Srijukta Prakash Kumar Mishra, an IPS, former Odisha Police DGP, who even took charge of crucial positions like the Chief of country's largest paramilitary Central Reserve Police Force, that is CRPF. During his tenure, the force was facing a number of challenges, especially from the left-wing extremism, but he, along with the initiatives of government, has ably fine-tuned operational efficacy and worked for the modernization of the paramilitary forces. A person of high excellence, capability, and up to the mark, has ably performed the task that has been provided to him. Sir, it's our proud privilege to welcome you. Sir, your topic as suggested by you is Internal Security of India. Now, I would like to stop here and invite Professor Aswini Kumar Mohapatra to initiate his talk. Over to Mr. Mohapatra.
Thank you. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
okay.
You are audible.
Thank you, Ms. Agarwal, and the organizer of the series of webinar or variety of topics. And I was quite delighted to know that you have already had and discussion in the last couple of weeks, maybe more than 2 weeks now. And that's very good initiative. It's quite encouraging, and given the kind of situation that I hope it would quite educative for the people who are confined to the respective home. And I'm also extremely glad to associate myself with the think tank that you have set up in Bhubaneswar. I was told last night, Center for Adivasi Research and Development, because I hail from a place which is tribally dominated area of Odisha, Mohapatra district. So obviously my heart goes out for the people, the native of the district. And of course, I would also like to thank the Department of History and Political Science, Jawaharlal Nehru College, Nepal, Cuttack, for organizing this webinar series, and my privilege and matter of pride to get back to all of you and share my thought, my understanding of international politics with all of you. Thank you very much. To begin with, assuming that I will be addressing a mixed crowd, not necessarily all of you would be taking interest in international politics, except trying to understand what is happening across the border vis-a-vis China. I do understand that until recently, most of you are occupied with what was going on in Pakistan and the kind of threat that Pakistan was posing to India, its territorial security, or in terms of carrying out a proxy war for last more than a decade. And of late, your mind has been diverted from Pakistan point of security threat to China. And because that's not your fault. This fault lies with all of us, the academics, the intellectuals, and more than the academics, intellectual journalists, with the foreign policy establishment of the country, because they are the ones who uh, construct a discourse, okay, the debate. And you have a grand discourse in which China doesn't figure as a source of threat to India. So we often come out with all kinds of narrative like India, China, bhai bhai. Then we have a China India, like the Americans did it, Chimerica. So basically, the purpose was to in a way suppress the fact, not to make us jittery. Oh, India ultimately will be called upon to fight two-front war, and maybe we do not have the required strength, or maybe we had a problem with the leadership. What I call theoretical terms essential factor, not the structural factor. So before I come to that, I would like to just very briefly introduce my theme, today's theme, to all of you, given the kind of uh, the mixed nature of the crowd that I'm supposed to address here. Uh, See, I'm quite happy as a student of international politics of late, we have become quite important, right? A lot of people are taking interest in what's happening, what is Indian foreign policy. None of you ever bothered about it. We are more preoccupied with the economic issues, social issues, and all the kind of problem that you have uh, coming from the existing social cleavages that you have, religion, tribal, clan, region, linguistic, all kinds of things. So, but then to begin with, you need to know the two structure at the global level. One is globalization, second is international politics. Okay. So you say globalization as a structure or a phenomenon. It is both the positive side as well as the negative aspect. It was not so visible until the end of the Cold War. Effectively, if you want to draw the turning point, it could be somewhere in the early 90s. Then we had the onset of globalization is a phenomenon. Some people say it was imposed on all of us, regardless the peculiarity a community has, regardless the stage of economic development a country has, whatever it is, it began to spread. So much so, if you look at this, the present crisis, that is the COVID-19 pandemic, you see how globalized this pandemic is, whether you accept it or not. All of us, more or less, have become victim of it. Look at the scare, look at the nervousness, look at the kind of common protocols we have been asked to follow. Whether 6 meter distance, social distancing, these are the common jargons these days since the outbreak of the ravaging pandemic, which had origin in the Wuhan province of China. It's not simply confined to Asia, just all across the country, the world, sorry, including Latin America, far off places like Brazil, Argentina, of actually have difficulty, I don't know, locating those countries. Smaller country in South America, it's like that. So that is the trend representing the very essence of globalization. That could be explicated in terms of, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
In terms of interdependence, in terms of interconnectedness, which in a way have transcended the national boundaries, okay, the territorial boundaries, the community boundaries. We have transcended the national boundaries, okay, the territorial boundaries, the community boundaries. So it is inescapable in many ways, the so-called globalization. It is an economic dimension, it has a security dimension, it has a social dimension, cultural dimension. So that is one aspect. But then when you look at the international politics, which involves mostly the interaction among nation state, globalization beyond interaction among nation states, it in a way it dissolves the territorial boundaries. The territorial boundaries is essential precondition for a sovereign state, right? It creates a kind of space where the so-called sovereignty, the irreducible aspect of a state, get dissolved. Okay. But when you look at the international politics, which is equally important, which stresses on territorial sovereignty, where it treats each state as equal, regardless of its power potential, regardless of how powerful that country is, and regardless of the nature of state it is, autocratic, theocratic, totalitarian, democratic, all are equal. And most of them you'll see would claim to have their own national anthem, airlines, representative United Nations. So these are the external indication of the sovereignty. Internally, maybe it's fragmented. Yes, like countries like Afghanistan, Somalia, which you call the failed or collapsed state. But nevertheless, they are recognized as equal because they have one vote in United Nations General Assembly, right? So international politics involves interaction among states, nation state, emphasizes sovereignty. Hence, the concerned state, when it interacts with other state, either a neighbor or a distant neighbor or a larger power, it is concerned with three aspects. One is its territorial sovereignty, which is related to security. And second is economic prosperity. And third is on ontological identity. That's on identity, where the given nation feels at peace with the defined identity it has. But then, so when the identity question is concerned, you'll find many states where identity is artificial. In the country like India, where it is evolved over, like say centuries. So hence, the identity and the land are inseparably, inexorably linked. So when you talk about the ontological identity, I think country like India, India is a meaningless term for me, which is given to us by the British, Bharata, which means approximately a knowledge society. Okay, unlike India is a meaningless word like Madras, which was of late changed to Chennai. So what I'm saying here is identity and land are inseparably linked, organically linked. So when you fight for your security, you simply not try to protect the physical security, physicality of the state. You also fight for the given identity, because identity is embedded in the community which is associated with the jameen, with the land. Again, a point. So the three prime objective of a foreign policy of a country when it interacts with other is territorial sovereignty or physical security. Second, the identity, and third is prosperity. Then when I talk about economic prosperity, so how can you have the security without, how can you have the security of the state without military infrastructure? So there is a kind of link between economic development and the military infrastructure. It is the wealth which underpins your military power. I'm not saying this. That's a well-quoted statement, sentence of a very celebrated author, Paul Kennedy. He wrote a book in 1988, Rise and Fall of Great Powers. He say wealth is essential. Wealth underpins the military power of a state, and the military power in turn is used to safeguard the wealth. What does it say? It says the correlation between military power and economic strength of the wealth. So it's very, very important for you to bear that in mind when you take into account the latest threat or the aggressive posturing on part of our great neighbor China. So this way, the military preparedness and economic development and economic prosperity are interrelated. Then the third aspect of the international politics is it is hierarchical. On the one side, it treats all states equal, but in terms of distribution of resources, it is hierarchical. You have the big power, medium power, small power. So third aspect, the third dimension of international politics is when you say only international, it is not simply international. You have a three level. international, regional, and bilateral. So when you talk about a state interaction, interaction at the bilateral level, interaction at the regional level, and interaction at the international level. So you have a three-level of analysis. And when I say hierarchy, you have a three rank: the top dog, and the lowest and underdog. And we are unfortunately located in the middle, a mixed dog variety. Hence, we carry the larger burden of trying hard to maintain a semblance of international stability and order because it benefits us, right? So that's a broadly kind of conceptual framework you need to have before I proceed to explain the foreign policy challenges facing the country today since the outbreak of COVID-19 and what is likely to happen in future. The so far the international order is concerned, and just uh, give me a tinkle in case I exceed my time, right? Uh, uh, what I saying? Yeah. So, what are the foreign policy challenges that we face? Uh, see, when we try to see where India is located, so India is located in the middle. Second, I say international system is hierarchical. Hence, a competition is inevitable. Those at the second ranks, second rung, always would try to come to the top. So this competition creates the anarchy because those who are the top, they try to maintain their position, their status. Who are at the top? America and so as a kind of footnote for this for a mixed audience, let me tell you, those who are at the top, they are in possession of the relative power potential, both in the category of economic strength, knowledge strength, and or above all, the military strength. Think for a moment. America is the only global power in military terms today, which has deployment of its military assets over 100 countries and nearly 700 bases. The only country which can go any part of the world in a comparative limited time, undertake either a preemptive strike or or a strike to contain a particular escalation, conflict escalation, or a risky situation. So what I'm trying to tell you here, those who are at the top, they always, have created a kind of knowledge structure. That's another kind of correlation I would like to highlight here. What is the knowledge structure? That because they are in possession of the material resources and the military's capacity, that they have the right to rule the country, a world, as a kind of international serif or a policeman, and to supplement that kind of status of superiority or supremacy or preeminence, they have supplemented with the kind of mega narrative or the knowledge that you, whatever you read, whatever you say, whatever you do, whatever you write, whatever you think, has had its origin in the West, right? So so-called knowledge production also has its own objective, that is to supplement the kind of imperialist attitude or approach of the West, because it happens to be at the first rank of the hierarchical order of international system. So that shows in a way, briefly, correlation between the knowledge production and power. It is power which is legitimized through the West-oriented knowledge production, which had overbearing influence at a cognitive level among all of us in varying degree to accept the superiority of the West. Oh, West is the great, right? And West becomes a kind of El Dorado for many of the youngsters to rush to the place to make money, because there's a place they think they can really and outshine others and learn a lot of things. Anyway, so this is very brief uh, what I say, portrayal of international politics. So I repeat, those of you who take interest in international politics or social science in general, you have globalization as a phenomenon, international politics, kind of real politics, and third is the cognitive level, the the power projection through West-oriented knowledge production. That's three aspects. I say three dimension. Then, if you try to find out how India has behaved in the given situation, to begin with, I explained the spatial location of India in the structure, the hierarchical international structure that's in the middle. But in last 10 years, India has gone beyond its traditional middle rank status. It has not gone to the top. But nevertheless, India's voice of late has been recognized, has been to an extent reciprocated too, which was never heard before. India used to behave like a typical trade union leader representing all these underdogs that I mentioned, the post-colonial third world countries, oh, and in the banner of non-aligned movement, anchored, demanding a new international order, end of colonialism, end of imperialism, Western domination, all kinds of stuff. So it's more a kind of angry, anguished, typical Amitabh Bachchan 1960s movie, Maar Dunga, Tod Dunga, resisting the international order because it perceived it is tilted in favor of the West. It's a new form of exploitation. So India cannot become a part of it. Instead, India will be resistant to it. So behaving like a typical rebel of 1960s. Okay. So that resistance, I'm not saying has petered away, has gone, it remains, but you find the voice of resistance become slower, less, what I call, less frequently sounded, less frequently made. You see, it is more the way it used to do it before. So it's not cellular anymore. So next is what I'm saying. Next is, so India's you have the corresponding foreign policy behavior of India in last 15 years. It's gradually become more assertive in terms of its own national objective, national interests. Then joining the so-called third world bloc, the underdogs, to form a group, form a bloc opposed to the so-called the West, which is well captured in its identification with non-aligned movement. In last 10 years, if you see foreign policy behavior of India, what is becoming quite pronounced is how India has moved past, I'm saying PAST, moved past non-aligned movement. Doesn't mean it has dropped non-aligned movement. Officially, no, but it has gone beyond non-aligned movement. So it is trying to become more assertive in the global fora, not as a union leader of the poorer country or the so-called global south, more is an influential actor in terms of formulating international rules and norms and convention where India will have a say. You have a number of instances supporting the argument that I've just now presented before you. That is a changing role of India internationally. And why has it happened? The two things very briefly. One, because of its economic growth since the onset of economic liberalization in the early 90s, which gained momentum under the first NDA government led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And unfortunately, 10 years of UPA turned out to a huge, huge setback to India's efforts to acquire global status. Because the UPA happened to be an unstable coalition government with a proxy prime minister more preoccupied with internal issues than focusing on external arena. And the second term of the UPA was preoccupied with the scam, scandal, corruption, so very little time that it found for its own internal, contradiction to pursue India's foreign policy objective to become more assertive, okay, more articulate, and to an extent even to act as a balancer. Okay, that's something didn't happen. So these are some of these drawbacks that you had when Prime Minister Modi took over. The Prime Minister took office, and he faced those challenges, and he continues to face those challenges even today. I'll come to it just 2 minutes later. So what I'm trying to tell you is that India, because of its newly gained economic strength, reflected in the GDP growth rate, it's the kind of investment it had outside, the FDI in India, and its gradual integration into the expanding capitalist market globally. But India definitely couldn't compete successfully with China. So that remained the biggest problem for India, because China started its economic liberalization way back in the late 1970s. So by the time you had the Tiananmen Square episode, if you recall, 1980-89, you had already China had made sufficient progress in terms of economic liberalization. It was relatively easy for China to do it because it was non-democratic. It's a single-party ruled state. Things could be simply thrust on the people, and the people's voice would not be heard. Any kind of resistance could be crushed by the powerful state. So that's the background. So I just come to the present situation. What I'm saying here is, so when India, because conventionally located in the middle, trying to catch up with those at the top, so obviously you have a tension, because those at the top will not allow you to accommodate. It's like you have to get crushed into that elite circle. It's dominated by US and the West. But incidentally, what happened? India didn't have the required power wherewithals to compete with the West, but China had. So China, which was a rising power as much India was, but China accepted the challenge, getting integrated gradually into the global economic system. It exploited the lacuna, the flaws of the capitalist system that America had, and became an economically dominant power through the monopolistic control of supply chain. So much so, all the leading American companies, so out of 500, at least 480 of them shifted their own base from America to China, creating unemployment problem in America itself. So you will find in the last 15 years, America increasingly becoming dependent for all small manufactured item on China, with China becoming dependent on America. So this way, China's economic strength made it quite over-ambitious, especially in the wake of 2008 fiscal the problem that the world witnessed, the kind of financial meltdown that you had, where China came out to support the countries, but Western countries which are in great trouble. So that's the way gradually the West began to recognize China as the economic power. And by 2011 and 12, when America was preoccupied all over the place globally, is the security provider, China had the free time. It was well protected. There was no other country to attack China, no other country to contest China. It had launched its BRI project, the ambitious hegemonic project called the Belt and Road Initiative. The flagship program of the BRI is the CPEC. So when it launched the program on the basis of the ideals like international cooperation, interdependence, but underlying all that rhetoric, China had its own focus, that is to emerge as a global power, replacing United States of America. So at the systemic level, effectively from 2010 onwards, you had a transition. It's called the systemic transition. That is the one hegemonic power which was already on decline, that is America, is being challenged constantly by a rising power America, rising power China. So tension at the global systemic level inevitable. Okay? So you have the systemic level problem between a declining hegemon on the one hand and rising challenger on the other, and it had its own negative fallout both at the regional level, also at the bilateral level, so far relation among the countries are concerned. So whatever happened, to cut this story short, March 2020 onwards is quite predictable. Why? Because the Chinese, particularly 2017 Doklam standoff, if you recall, the Chinese leadership realized that to become a global power, to restore Chinese status as the preeminent power in Asia, I'll just tell you as a footnote later on what I wrote in Statesman. So India would be the formidable barrier. The first country to deal with is America, is India, because it was India which refused to become a part of BRI, which was opposed to the CPAC, right? For a variety of reasons, all of you know. So all this in a way acted as an excuse for China to pressurize India all through. Finally, when the Chinese
Hello, hello. Professor Mohapatra, you're not audible.
I'm sorry, I'll just now. Hello, there's a
Okay, sir, you're
yeah,
audible.
connectivity problem, disruption from on my side, at my end, not yours. And I was just trying to tell you here is so that is the reason why the China, yeah. So India was getting closer to America. So you had the broader, problem that I mentioned. I just now outlined at the systemic level between America and China. So perceiving that India getting closer to America, and obviously China tried to take on India. So whatever problem that you found subsequently in the eastern part of Ladakh was a reflection of a larger problem, larger issue at the global systemic level. That's my understanding. That is between a declining hegemon on the one side and a rising hegemon on the other. But then the COVID-19 exposed the weakness of China. Yes, China is economically a powerful country, but doesn't possess the corresponding military strength which United States of America has. So you have a clear-cut case of power asymmetry. And the one, in terms of one component of power, economic component, yes, China may have an edge over America in terms of controlling the total global trade, in terms of its GDP growth rate, in terms of its investment outside, in terms of FDI inside China. But it is not reflected in terms of its own technological development or in its military infrastructure, and which is no match to United States of America. Clear? So you have that kind of situation, and whatever happened since say June, the Galwan Valley incident is reflection of that. What does it reveal? It reveals the weakness of the Chinese army. And all of us, in varying degree, were taught and trained mentally by great scholar, IRS specialist, analyst. Oh, you can't fight China. China is a greater threat, and you are no match to China. Why? Because you are always carried away by that economic success. We never try to see how militarily powerful they are, strategic leverage China had as compared to India. So we only look at one component of power, not power as a totality. I get your point. So economic is one component, military is another one, strategic another one, your soft power is another one. Acceptability globally. China is not acceptable. China is a country ruled by a single party. PLA, People's Liberation Army, is the army not of the state. It is the army of the Communist Party of China. So you have a serious legitimacy problem in China. If China tomorrow decide to undertake punitive measures against India or retaliatory measures against India, because since 31st August, we have occupied strategic heights of the hills across the lake. So the Chinese Communist Party does know what are the repercussions. It would be simply, a removal of the CCP from power, because Chinese Communist Party, doesn't enjoy the kind of popular legitimacy in a democratic India, a democratic political system the ruling party enjoys. One. And the Chinese Communist Party does not represent the total population of China. Okay. And even if it's 90% Chinese happen to be Han population, where there are 55 small ethnic communities living inside China. 60% of Chinese territory is contestable. The day Chinese Communist Party is overthrown, either through democratic election or through the popular uprising, in just a couple of weeks' time, you will see another Soviet Union unfolding. That is disintegration of China, minimum 7 provinces, including liberation of a great spiritual land, Tibet. Right? So the Communist Party leadership has to take into account all this cost benefit, long-term, short-term, benefits. If they do it, they know they cannot underestimate the military strength of India and the kind of military that you have deployed in one particular sector, that is eastern northern sector of India, where China has to disperse west and east. That is to protect its border against the rival power and the competitors, including Taiwan, Philippines, Vietnam. Of course, America is there in Indo-Pacific region, including South China Sea. But we have to actually confront the two major enemy on the Himalaya side, which is strategically and economically less important for China. So these are some of these calculations the Chinese Communist Party of India must have done it. So that was the reason why they are not today interested in taking on India. Okay, but that doesn't mean they're prepared to accept the status quo. For the first time, that's not. Of course, they have not digested so far. How dare India have acquired the strategic advantage by sitting on the top of the hill? I get your point. So you can oversee the movement of the Chinese army. It's all what I call the associated machinery, everything, the logistics. So obviously, China has a serious dilemma. The predicament of the Chinese Communist Party facing today is its own creation. I'll end here. How? Its own creation, because it's like an Islamist country, like our great neighbor Pakistan, where the Pakistani identity is defined in terms of religion. And 6 years back, in a PAW an opinion poll, 88% Pakistani said they are first Muslim, then Pakistani. In contrast, more than 90% Indians say first Indian, then Hindu. See the difference. So here, it is a religion which defines a Pakistani identity. In case of China, it is a history which defines the Chinese identity, right? And Chinese have nothing to do with the religion, Buddhism, Confucianism, nothing. It is history, and the history is largely concocted. Okay, it's called Middle Kingdom syndrome, like it's called the concept of Tianjia. Yeah, once upon a time, China was the middle of the heavenly created land of the territory, and all other areas, including southern Tibet, which includes nearly 90,000 square kilometer Arunachal Pradesh into the eastern sector, Sikkim, Nepal, Bhutan, all this satellite state of China, right? So Xi Jinping, ever since his rise to power 2014 onwards, as it reflected in his book, and there's a compilation of his book published last year, that how firmly and strongly believe in history, that once upon a time China was at the center of the world, and his mission is to restore the Chinese status at the center of the world as the preponderant power, and all other countries around either would become a satellite state or a kind of what I call the vassal state. So they try to redefine relationship, and they've come out with a new concept, as I mentioned before, the new narrative called Tianjia, that is to justify the creation of a Sinocentric global order, which would locate China at the center of the global politics. But then it's very difficult for a country like India to accept it. That's one. Second, because they're still today guided by that kind of idea, mission, that is the history driven identity of China, and based on which they continue to claim territories, whether in with Japan or Vietnam, Indonesia and South China Sea, or Philippines, or this side with India, Nepal and Sikkim. This will continue precisely because it remains an enduring source of reinforcing the legitimacy of Chinese Communist Party in Beijing. And this kind of ideology has turned the Chinese youth more aggressive and aggressive nationalist. Okay. And they are not prepared to make any compromise. So China is no longer a typical communist state the way it was envisioned by Mao Zedong. It is a nationalist state par excellence. And at the same time, it is a security state. It is a kind of surveillance state par excellence. Here, resistance simply is not tolerated. Okay. So in that kind of rogue state, which aspires to become the hegemonic global power, find India as a formidable opponent or a barrier on its march to become the global power, or to acquire or to retrieve its old status as the central power. So that is the reason why India-China problem would continue, would persist regardless of the outcome of a disengagement talk, which still continue. We'll have the 12th, I think, the next round of talk on 12th of October, but I'm quite skeptical about the outcome. Hence, the hostility, rivalry, or strained relationship between India and China would continue. And in that kind of scenario, our traditional enemy, Pakistan, always would try to take advantage of by aiding a military front so as to weaken India. So challenges are still there, but it depends how leadership act, either through a bipartisan foreign policy or on its own, so as to assure the Indians that the Indian security is well protected, and any kind of misadventure on part of any of our neighbor, whether Nepal or Pakistan or China, would be dealt with severely. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Professor Aswini Kumar Mohapatra, for your excellent deliberation. Your lecture has really filled a positivity about India as an emerging power, and it is very true that the people of India are Indian first, irrespective of the religion to which they belong. Thanks a lot again. Now, I would like to invite Srijukta Prakash Kumar Mishra to put his insightful views. Over to Mishra, sir. I will be requesting Srijukta Prakash Kumar Mishra to put his insightful views. Over to Mishra, sir.
Hello, good afternoon to all of you. Professor Mohapatra, who just spoke to all of you, then the principal and the faculty of the college, and all the dear participants who have come today. I am sure that you have all had an excellent lecture from Professor Mohapatra, who is basically has done deep research on these subjects, and I'm sure he must have given you a wonderful perspective of our international relations, especially with our neighbors, and what kind of problems we are facing because of that. I am not from the background of a teaching background. You all are aware that I have been a serving police officer for a long time, and retired in the year 2016 as DG of CRPF in Delhi. So I will be basically talking from my own experience as a police officer about the internal security challenges that our country is facing today. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes, sir.
Okay. So I will first, basically, I won't take much of your time because I'm sure that you have heard too much today. So most of you would be, I think your span of attention would be coming down. But in any case, I'll try to make it as interesting as possible so that you can listen to whatever I want to say. First of all, let me just clarify to you, most of you may not be aware about the structure of especially maintenance of law and order and investigation of crime, whether who exactly is competent to do all these things. So as students of political science, I'm sure you are aware that Constitution in Article 246 has laid out three lists, the union list, the concurrent list, and the state list, where the subjects on which I think legislations can be made have been made abundantly clear. If a subject is in the union list, it's the union government which makes legislation. If it is the concurrent list, I think both the state and union are passed. And if it is the state list, it is only the state which has the absolute authority over those subjects. So all of you need to be aware that maintenance of law and order and investigation of crime, which basically is the basic function of any internal security mechanism, is a state subject, and so the entire thing remains with the state. So you would now be interested in knowing what are the central agencies there for. So the state has its own structure. I think you are aware they have police stations, they have crime branch, they have vigilance, they have I think what is called the intelligence branch, where they collect intelligence, and these are the units under the state. Similarly, the center has several central organizations. I would briefly just tell you about the role of each of the central organizations. The central organizations are many. In fact, the most important of them is the IB, or what they call as the Intelligence Bureau. It is the premier intelligence collection organization of the Government of India, which has its units all over the country, and they are supposed to collect intelligence relating to internal affairs. Then we have what is called as you must have all heard, there's an organization called R&AW, which is called as the Research and Analysis Wing, which is there for a collection of external intelligence, like the American CIA. So they basically have stations abroad and also in the country, and they are mostly confined to collection of intelligence relating to other countries which affect India. Then we have what we call as the border guarding organizations. You know that India has a long border with various countries, starting from Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, Nepal, Burma. All these borders need to be guarded. You are aware that as per international law and international conventions, the army is not supposed to be in the border during peacetime. It is left to police, which is supposed to guard these borders. The army comes in only when there is a conflict. They are supposed to come in. So the army is always away from the border, and it is the border guarding organizations who do the regular, I think, watch and ward and policing duties or the guarding duties in the borders. So we have an organization called the BSF, which is called the Border Security Force, which is one of the largest forces next to the CRPF, which guards the borders with Pakistan and Bangladesh. They have specific roles. They guard these two borders. Then we have what is called as the ITBP, or the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, which is a relatively smaller force, but it is the force which guards the border against China. Then we have another border guarding organization, which is called the SSB, Sashastra Seema Bal. So that guards the border with Nepal. So these are the three major border guarding organizations which guard the border. Then we have investigating agencies which investigate crime, like you must have heard of CBI and the NIA. These are the two organizations which are central organizations which investigate cases. So here again, you'll ask me, if it is in a federal structure, if the cases are to be investigated by a central agency, what power do they have to come to the state? So there, let me clarify that the CBI can only investigate cases with the approval of the state government. So in many cases, the arrangement is that if the cases are against, because CBI, you know, their primary focus is on anti-corruption. So if there are cases of anti-corruption against central government employees, so in most of the states, the understanding is that the CBI has powers to investigate. If any state employee is involved or it is a state-specific case, then you have to seek a specific permission from the state before investigating it. Or CBI can investigate if there is a order from a High Court or the Supreme Court to investigate. So that is about the CBI. Then we have the investigating agency, or the NIA. This organization is slightly in different footing. Wherever a scheduled offense, the NIA Act lists out some scheduled offenses, especially terrorist-related cases. There, the NIA can suo motu investigate without any concurrence from the state government. This had been agreed by the states when the NIA Act was passed, and they have agreed. So all terrorist cases anywhere in the country, if the NIA wants or the central government wants, they can ask the NIA to investigate. These are the investigating agencies. Then we have what we call the CRPF, which I was heading that force. This is the only force which is there for maintenance of internal security. So you will find the CRP presence in almost all the states. They are the lead force for any kind of internal problems that the country faces. So they basically come and basically aid and assist the state government in maintenance of law and order and keeping or dealing with any problem that is specific to any area. So I hope I have made it clear about the architecture of the central and state police forces. Now we will go to the major challenges that we are facing in the field of internal securities. When we discuss about internal securities, I would basically confine myself to four major sectors where we are getting a lot of issues. The first, we were all aware, is Jammu and Kashmir. We were all aware that the Kashmir problem has been a source of serious concern for all of us right since 1990, when terrorism started taking ugly form in that state, and has been continuing ever since. So it's almost now 30 years till that we have been facing this problem. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but generally the problem has been persisting. And you were aware of the reasons that the Kashmir problem has been there. It's basically a Pakistani sponsored problem, and a lot of cross-border movement of terrorists take place. Who are all trained by the ISI in Pakistan, and they come into our country through the porous borders. Though the borders, everyone takes a lot of interest in guarding the border, but there are, if you see the topography of that area, it's not that easy. There are nalas and all which can't be really guarded, so they come they come through the high range mountains when the snow melts, and then come down whenever they feel like. So that is the scenario in Kashmir. We have various terrorist groups operating in Kashmir, of which I would like to name a few. The one which is more important, you must have all heard about this, is the Lashkar-e-Toiba, or LET, which is headed by a person called Hafiz Saeed, who stays in Pakistan. Then we have the Jaish-e-Mohammed, or the JEM, which is headed by Maulana Azhar, again operating from Pakistan. Then we have another big organization called the Hizbul Mujahideen, which is again headed by Pakistani Saeed Salahuddin, again from Pakistan. Then we have other smaller organizations like Harkatul Jihad al-Islam, or the Huzi, which was headed by Ilyas Kashmiri. Of course, he has been killed in a 2009 drone attack. And we have Al-Badr and JKLF, an old organization which had been headed by Amanullah Khan, who is no more. Then we have the ISIL, which Khorasan group, which is headed by Dawood Ahmad Sofi. He also again is dead. Then we have a ladies' wing of the terrorists, which is called as the Dukhtarande Millat, which is again funded to a large extent by Pakistan. So they are the ones who were basically instigating stone pelting and all, which is very rampant in the valley. So this is the problem there, which has been going on, and the number of terrorists, though the security forces have been trying their best to keep them down, we have now the problem of homegrown terrorists. The local Kashmir youth are taken to terrorism in a big way. There is a large-scale indoctrination of people. The other problem in Kashmir is the gradual fading away of the Sufi culture, which was a part of Kashmir, or Kashmir, which people talk of. That is gradually fading away, and we have a more dominant, more aggressive Salafi tradition of the Muslim, or the more hardcore, which is now coming into the valley in a big way. And that is why we see a large-scale, I think, increase in violence and all these kind of things. The major problems in Kashmir that we anticipate now, you are all aware that Kashmir is basically on a plateau, on a hill, and you have to. The main source of communication is through Jammu. So most of the armed forces, the army, the police forces who are stationed there have to be, I think, administrative support is from Jammu. So every day the army and the paramilitary forces, they run convoys, taking people from Jammu, people, material, everything from Jammu, which comes up through the Jawar tunnel and comes into the valley. So the major problem is guarding these convoy, which move almost on a daily basis. You are all aware that when there was one such convoy movement in near Pulwama, very close to Srinagar, SCRP bus was, I think, attacked by the militants, and we lost about 40 odd people in that blast which took place. So this is the problem. Running convoys is a big problem. Then you have Fedayeen attacks. Fedayeens are basically suicide squads who come with the sole aim of inflicting as much damage as they can, and they are not a large group, maybe one or two, but they come heavily armed, and they enter into a place and start firing indiscriminately. especially the convoy attacks are done by such people. They come stop the convoy, and you are aware that Kashmiris most of the time they wear what is called as a firan. It's a long kind of a woolen coat, which very easy to hide weapons inside that. And the moment they see their target, they just take out their rifles and start attacking. And they know that very well that they will be killed, but that doesn't inhibit them from spreading terror and killing a lot of people. So this is if a guy attacks is a major issue. Then we have what is called as a grenade lobbing. We were aware that there are a lot of fixed posts of paramilitary and Kashmir police, which are at various places, especially for guarding of convoys, guarding of vital installations, guarding of important places within the cities. So whenever you have a fixed patrol or a camp of the paramilitary forces or something, then you just come close to that, lob a grenade and run away. So once the grenade reaches the ground, it blasts and causes damage to the security force. That is another issue. Then we have to be always careful about subversion of JK police. JK police, as you are aware, is basically constituted by their own Kashmiri people. So there is always a possibility that they can be subverted. There have been many cases where Kashmir police, one or two constables have run away with weapons and all and joined the terrorists. So this is another issue which has been a major problem in Kashmir. So if you come to the figures, I will just read out that since the problem started, I think we have lost about 5,400 odd security personnel. We have killed or neutralized 22,000 militants so far, and 3,000 have been captured, 4,500 have surrendered. If you look at the current situation prevailing in Kashmir, the figures would be anything around 400 local terrorists still in operation and 150 Pakistani terrorists who are operating in the valley. So you must be reading or hearing in the news that every day there is some encounter or some incident where the security forces go and neutralize some terrorists. So these are the terrorists who are still operating. So it's not that once we deal with these 450, the problem will end, because another 450 will again come and take their place. Or the 150 Pakistanis who are there, if they are taken out, another 150 are still would be training near the borders to come in and take their place. So this is the situation which has been going on in Kashmir. So now we come to the other important sector which all of you are aware, which I think our state also faced to a large extent, is the problem of the left-wing extremism. This is the second important area which affects our internal security. I would just give you a brief rundown on the Innoctial Movement. I think you might be all aware. If you are not, then please note that this problem is a very, very old problem. It started in the year 1967 in an area called Naxalbari in North West Bengal. So this movement was basically a revolt of the agriculture class, or the peasant, or the working labor, agricultural labor class, which was led by a person called Charu Mazumdar and another called Kanu Sanyal. These are two very important names in the history of Maoist struggle in the country. That Charu Mazumdar and Kanu Sanyal, both are now dead, but they are the ones who started this problem in here. Then it spread to all over Bengal, parts of Odisha, parts of Andhra Pradesh, and the 67, 70s was a really bad time where Odisha was again affected. States like Mayurbhanj, Ganjam, Mohapatra, they were very badly affected, and parts of Andhra Pradesh. So this was the initial movement. Then around the same time in 1969, another movement led by one Kanai Chatterjee called the Dakshin Desh Group. They started operating in parts of Bengal and the undivided Bihar then. So that was the Dakshin Desh Group. And in 1975, this Dakshin Desh Group formed what is called the Maoist Community Center, or the MCC, and was basically operating in Bihar, and they had links with their counterparts in Nepal, where you all are aware that the Naxals have a large role to play in the administration and the politics of Nepal. Around 1980, I think once this initial movement of Kyaru Mazumdar and all died down, there was in 1980 in Andhra Pradesh, especially coastal Andhra Pradesh, where there was a person called Kundapalli Sitaramaya. He started a group which is called the People's War Group, or the PWG, which created a lot of havoc in Andhra Pradesh. I think Andhra Pradesh has seen the worst of Naxal violence, losing a lot of police officers, including senior police officers, political leaders and all. And so the PWGs really organized themselves in the jungles of Andhra Pradesh and became a big force to contend with. But then you had simultaneously two groups working, the PWG in Andhra Pradesh, parts of Odisha and Chhattisgarh, and you had the MCC, which was working in Bihar and Jharkhand and in the northern parts of the country, including parts of Uttar Pradesh, Chandauli district and other places. So in 2004, they merged, the PWG and the MCC merged and formed what is called now as the CPI, Marxist-Leninist Group, CPI-ML, or the present form of Naxal. It initially, after the merger, it was headed by one cadre from Andhra Pradesh called Gopala Lakshman Rao, or Ganapati, was his pet name. Ganapati continued till almost till last year, and then he has been removed now, and it is now the leadership lies with one Nammala Keshav Rao, who is again from Andhra, but he is more aggressive and is a military-oriented person. That's why I think after his joining, the spurt in violence has again taken place. Now the major centers of Naxal violence continues to be Chhattisgarh, which has large cadres of local people who have been, I think, somehow taken part in this movement. Chhattisgarh continues to be a problem. Then parts of Odisha are still affected, though not as badly as it was earlier. Then Jharkhand is another state which is badly affected. Though West Bengal is now relatively free, but there is a possibility that they can erupt any time. Then the movement had spread to the south also, especially the Wayanad forest area of Kerala and the tri-junction between Kerala, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Though most of the leaders have now been either arrested or neutralized, but the problem can come up any time. So the Naxals had their own ideology of basically, it was a ideology which was, I think, their main, I think they looked up to Mao Zedong, or the Chinese leader, who had staged the Great Revolution in China. So he was their inspirational hero, and Maoist literature still influences the Naxals to a large extent. They completely believe in the Maoist tactics. They like the enemy's armory is your own armory. You must have seen that they don't have their own arms, so their idea of getting arms and ammunition is from the police forces. All of you are aware that two major arm loot or heist took place in Odisha. One was in Koraput, the other was in Nayagarh, when the Naxals came in large numbers and looted the armories and took away large amounts of arms and ammunition. They also attack police forces and kill them and take away the arms and ammunition. So whatever arms they use is basically the ones taken from the air. That again is a Maoist philosophy of treating the enemy's armory as your own armory. So they take it. They also follow the path of jungle warfare. They would follow you and hit you when you are least expecting it, and then disappear in the jungles. This is the kind of strategy that they face, and So the police over the years, especially the local, all the state police and the CRP, they have devised ways and means of tackling them. They have devised special forces to deal with the problem. The foremost being the Greyhounds of Andhra Pradesh, which succeeded to a large extent in eliminating the Naxals. Then it was followed by Odisha. We started our own force called the SOG, or the Special Operation Group. The CRP started its own force called the Cobra, or the Commando Battalion for Resolute Action. So they are the ones who are trained for jungle warfare. They can stay inside the jungle for 5-6 days at a time, move around, and follow exactly the same method which the Naxalists follow. That is the reason for which these forces have been getting large amount of success. So this problem just can't be wished away, though it has now lost its ideological base. It's no longer fighting for the cause of proletariat. You must have seen that the Naxals are killing more tribals than helping them. It has become more of an extortionist kind of movement. People are joining this movement to make money, and though it has lost its ideological base, but still the feudal, I think, our system of large people still being landless laborers, they have a sway over these people, and this movement can erupt anytime. Moreover, now they have basically taking up all local causes. You would find an actual presence in mining areas where people fight that our mines are ours. If they want to establish an industry, there is displacement of people, they come and take up their cause. We have urban Naxals who are taking up urban causes and operating in urban areas. So this problem will be with us for a long time, and we have to be extremely careful about. So now I come to the third sector of internal security, which is the Northeast. You are all aware that the Northeast is a very volatile area. It was one state earlier, Assam, and now it has been divided into 7 states, which are called the Seven Sisters. It's Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Manipur, and Nagaland. These 7 states have been more or less created in ethnic lines, because you have all kind of people living in the Northeast. You have Nagas, you have Mizos, you have Arunachal tribals, you have the people of Tripura are different. So each has its own linguistic or ethnic groups who are there. But this division of states created several problems, because the ethnic groups had their own aspirations. They wanted larger areas. So there was constant conflict between these groups. And you have several militant groups in almost all these states. Though the problem is now more or less dormant because of persistent, I think, policing, use of the presence of army, the paramilitary forces. But it can erupt any time. And you are all aware that now we are working on a Naga Accord, which again has been running into problems. They want a full autonomy, which the government of India obviously doesn't want to give. You have now several other Naga groups who are operating in different states, especially in Manipur. So they have different ambitions. You have local Manipur Maiti population. They have their own group. So this problem in Northeast would be a long game, but immediately I can foresee that there are problems in Assam which relate to, you are all aware that they relate to the NRC and the CAA, which are matters of concern in Assam. There was a lot of violence after the passing of the bills. Then you have activities of the All Assam Student Union, which actually are preventing the tribals who had gone and settled in tea estates and other outsiders. They are against them. There is a lot of ethnic violence. There is killing of tribals. We have another organization called the ULFA. Then in Manipur, we have anxiety over the Naga Accord. So Nagaland, of course, though doesn't have much of a problem, but the entire future of Nagaland would depend on how the Naga Accord goes. Tripura, though, is silent at the moment, but the Tripura can start any moment unless you are really careful and keep a close watch on what is happening in Tripura. Similarly, the problem in the northeast is mainly because we have a very, very porous and unguarded border with Burma. And Burma, you know, is again a state which is not that friendly to the Indian um, government. And you have the Chinese who basically use that route to pump in money, weapons, and all into the northeast to create a lot of problems in that area. So this continues. Professor Mohapatra must have told you about the our constant problem with China in Arunachal, the Arunachal boundary, like the one in Ladakh. The Chinese always say that it is ours, and so we have to be extremely careful about what is happening in the northeast. This would definitely take a lot of our energy and attention over the coming years. Then we have a problem which has not been very new to this country, but which will always persist, is the problem of fundamentalism, Islamic fundamentalism. You must have seen that there had been a spate of bombings in the last decade in various places, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Pune, Bombay, Delhi. So these were basically carried out by small fundamentalist groups who basically was the one coming from Karnataka, the Bhatkal brothers, and then they were named as the Indian Mujahideen, or the Indian Mujahideen was a name given to them very loosely. But with the arrest of Bhatkal and all their operatives, especially the overground workers in Simi and other organizations, the problem now is more or less under control. But this is a problem you can never say that it is under control, because you have all kind of, you must have been reading in the papers that the South now has a group called the PF. Then we have a group called the Jamaat-e-Islam Jihad. Then we have the Devans, we have the Ahli Hadith and the Tablighi Jamaat. These are groups which can operate at will at any time and send small suicide squads, or what we call in parlance as the lone wolves, who can come and attack you anytime at any place and cause serious damage. Apart from the damage, they cause a lot of security concern, because if you are hit in, say, a city in like Bangalore, Hyderabad, or Delhi, then the people lose confidence in the whole system. So this is one problem which you have to really guard. So let me now, having told you all this, I have to tell you that keeping a watch over all this, you need a really strong intelligence mechanism. Earlier, the intelligence system was basically one which was basically based only on the what we call as the human intelligence. You had sources at various places who used to give you information that this is going to happen, this is going to happen. This is now a thing of the past. Now, I think all over, you must have seen in various English films and all, the world is shifting over to what we call as the technical intelligence, or TI. Technical intelligence is, again, largely dependent on how much money you spend on that. It's a highly capital-intensive project, and it can cover from very basic things like CCTV cameras to telephone interception, monitoring the cyberspace, then collection of intelligence through drones, through satellites. So it goes on and on. So we have been developing our own capability for technical intelligence, and that is the reason why I'm sure that the Indian Mujahideen could be eliminated. And if you see that nothing is happening, just thank the people who are working 24 hours behind the scene to see that you are safe. So this is a battle which is going on and on. And I'm sure that these security forces, both in the center and the states, have been taking a lot of interest in guarding all these fronts that I have just said. The CRP, I think, is present in all these sectors and in large numbers. I think if you ask me, I think Kashmir would be having more than 50 battalions of CRP, that's about more than 50,000 men. The Naxal sector will be again having around 40, 50 battalions, that would be another 50,000. Northeast is about 30. So that is the kind of central forces which are looking into it. The army, of course, takes a lot of role in Jammu and Kashmir. There is a special unit of the army called the Rashtriya Rifles, which has been RR, which has been created for these internal security duties in Kashmir. So they also do an excellent job. So it all goes on with the coordination of all forces together, the local police, the paramilitary forces, the army, the central organizations. They all work together, and we have a government now which is very, very proactive to security needs. They, especially our Honorable Prime Minister, takes a lot of interest in ensuring that the security forces are given their due. They are well equipped. Their morale is high, and you must have all seen that whenever any major incident happens, he visits this spot and talks to the police personnel, spends Diwali or occasions like Holi with them, and cheers them up. So this is the kind of leadership that we have been looking for a long time. It has finally come, and I am sure that with this, internal security is in very good hands. Now I am open to questions. Let me see. I think in the chat box, or if there is any question, you can ask.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello. Am I audible, sir?
yes.
Sir, this is Dr. Pradipta Ranjan Patnaik from Salepur Autonomous College. I'm Assistant Professor of Sociology there. I first thank the organizer for offering this platform to interact with you, who was at the top of the police administration. Sir, my question relates to the internal security from the point of view of our federal structure. Sir, don't you think that our loose federal structure is responsible for weakening of our internal security? Number one. Number two, whether the question of diversity, that we have so many diversities. Ours is a huge country. We have linguistic diversities, we have ethnic diversities, we have diversities of different nature. So don't you think that diversity is also a challenge to our unity and integrity? And the third supplementary question is that whether this religious fundamentalism is something which is weakening our the federal structure, or for that matter, even some states are up in arms against the center. I have seen in recent days they wish to start their parallel administration. So being at the top of once you were at the top of the police administration, now the restrictions or the regimentation is not there to express your clear opinion on that. Sir, please, what's your take on these issues, sir? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Patnaik, I want to answer your questions. First of all, you said that we have a loose federal structure which is affecting our internal security setup. I will not agree to that. In the beginning, I told you about the setup that we have, and I'm sure that whenever there is a major problem, I think the central government really steps in and takes care of the situation. You are all aware when we had a serious problem of Naxals in states which didn't have the resources to fight it, especially Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and Jharkhand, Bengal. These are the states which really didn't have much of resources to fight, though Andhra Pradesh, because of its long history fighting the Naxals, could do their own setup. But we took time. So till that time, I think the central government really stepped in, and large amount of paramilitary forces were given to these states, who I think they still continue in a large measure in these states, especially in Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Bengal, and Jharkhand, who have been taking care of the situation. And if you I am telling from my experience, wherever there is a threat to national security, like a possible attack from Indian Mujahideen or something, and there is any information, there is a lot of coordination which exists between the police forces and the central agencies, and they see to it that it is not goes out of hand. One thing which binds all of us is our All India services. You are aware, Dr. Patnaik, that the Indian Police Service is an All India service, and so a IPS officer who is in Odisha would certainly have links with other officers in the center and in the states. So that kind of coordination is never lacking. So so we have what is called as a, and that was what I think Sardar Patel had initially thought of when he thought of these All India services, the ISI and IPS and the IFS. So that is one thing which keeps us together. There is a lot of coordination, and there is no feeling that I belong to a state, I will not act on a central information, or the center doesn't say that this is a state which is not doing well with us, so we will not help them. That never happens. And when the question of security of the country comes, we act as one. That is one. Second is you were talking of our diversity, which has weakened our internal security. I again, when I told you of the 4 sectors, I have never spoken of the hinterland. I think these ethnic problems might be issues in the northeast, those 7 small states of the northeast, but never in the mainland. I think all of us are together in the fight against terror. There is no question of linguistic differences, caste differences, or anything, or even religious differences when it comes to fighting terror. I would always say that this problem of terror is restricted to a small group who do not follow their own tenets of religion and create problems for us. But I am sure that we will get over it. And this problem is not really peculiar to India. In fact, I think this fundamentalist terror is one thing which is facing almost all the countries, European countries, America and Japan. They are all very wary of this fundamentalist kind of attacks. So that is what I wanted to tell you, and I hope I have clarified your doubts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir.
Convincing answer, I think.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Am I audible, sir?
You are audible. Please tell me.
Sir, myself, Dr. Ramachandra Mohanty, Associate Professor, Department of Education, BB Autonomous Mahavidyalaya Chandigarh. Thanks for your nice talk, and I also get you as an honest officer in the Department of Police. My question is something somehow different. As in West Bengal Communist government used Naxalite, Maoist in different occasions for their own party interest, and now Banerjee government is doing the same thing. So what is your opinion, sir?
I think it's what you say is could be partly correct, but I'm sure these are very short-sighted leaders who play with fire. You were aware of political patronage to various Sikh militant groups in Punjab during the 80s, and what kind of consequences we had to reap. So the same thing they tried in Bengal. But I am sure that the problem can be easily taken over because taken charge of. The Naxals are gradually losing their steam in various states because of, I think, all-round development, people joining the developmental mainstream. So our focus should be basically to assimilate people, see that they develop and earn their livelihood in an honest and good manner and live a good life. So once that is achieved, I am sure that all these problems should be over.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shrijukta Prakash Kumar Mishra, for sharing your experience and making an explanation about the structure of internal security in India. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Shubham Das to initiate the discussion forum. Over to Mr. Shubham Das.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, we have one more question for Mr. Prakash Mishra sir. From Sarat Chandra Pradhan. Do you think exploitation of Adivasi is the root cause of growing Maoist outfit in Odisha? Prakash sir, please unmute yourself and respond this question. Please unmute yourself, sir. Prakash Mishra sir, please unmute yourself. I think there is a problem with Prakash Mishra sir. Now I would like to request.
Yeah, I can now get you.
Okay.
You were talking about the exploitation of tribals. Yes, to a large extent, yes. In fact, you are aware that we have a sizable tribal population in various parts of the country, including Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, and the problem which initially started was basically because of this feudal agricultural system that we had. You are all aware that in many states you didn't have the what is called as the land reforms, and a particular landlord owned almost all the land, and the remaining villagers were all landless laborers. They were subjected to a lot of torture and I think they used to do the hard work. They were ill-treated. So that is how the problem initially came up. It was an agrarian problem, as I said, and gradually kept going on and on. Then you also had the government agencies like the forest guards and others coming into the forest. The tribals always treated the forest as their own. In fact, there is a saying in Chhattisgarh. If you ask a tribal in Chhattisgarh that what is heaven, he will say that miles and miles of jungle. That is heaven for them. If someone asked them later what is hell, so he said that it is miles and miles of jungle with one forest guard. So one forest guard could play so much of havoc in their life by like torturing them, abusing them, taking them to his post and beating them up. So that is how they got alienated from the mainstream, and then a natural life was interrupted. And when they found the option that there is somebody who is coming with arms and ammunition to help them, they took up that cause. But as I said, this ideology is gradually gone, and now the Naxals have become basically exploiters. You have seen that the Naxals are killing more tribals than they are killing others. They are not killing contractors and others who are exploiting the people. They basically take money from them and are harassing the tribals. That is why the Naxal movement is gradually losing its steam, and the tribal people are going against the Naxals.
Thank you, sir, for responding all the questions. Now I would like to request Professor Aswini Mohapatra to respond few questions from our participants.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, we have 6 questions for you. If you put your observation in deep, then we can touch all 6 questions in time. So one question is from SK Imran, whether it is a fact that our bilateral relations with neighboring countries got worsened during these last 5 years. Whether government is aware that some of our neighbor countries, which were previously dependent on India for their basic needs, are depending on other countries at present. Whether our stand against some nations have resulted in deterioration of our trustworthiness for countries like Nepal and Bhutan. Is this the fault of in governance of the Indian government, Over to you, sir.
Hello. Hello,
Yes, sir.
there's a lot of disruption today, unfortunately.
Okay, sir. I'm repeating the question again.
Yes,
If you
please.
could, okay.
Yeah, please. Be brief. Yeah.
Sir, we have 6 questions for you. If you put your observation in brief, then we can touch all questions in time.
Yeah, sure. Tell me.
So one question is from SK Imran, whether it is a fact that our bilateral relations with neighboring countries got worsened during the last 5 years. Whether government is aware that some of our neighbors countries which were previously dependent on India for their basic needs are depending on other countries at present. Whether our stand against some countries have resulted in deterioration of our trustworthiness for countries like Nepal and Bhutan. Is this the fault of governance of the Indian government?
Yeah, thank you. It's the deterioration of relation with Nepal has more to do with Chinese penetration of South Asia region, and which started effectively from 2006 onwards. If you recall, the Chinese adopted this strategy called the string of pearls. So they try to encircle India strategically through the investment in countries like China, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Also, they try to do the same in Nepal. What happened recently, I guess actually the present government was caught up in a internal crisis in Nepal between the Madhesi and the new government out there, and they kind of sanctioned, the government decided to impose. That led to a kind of Nepalese overall alienation from India. So dependence is still there, and the cultural relation between Nepalese and the Indians uh, still persist. You know, there's something, it's quite an enduring one. It cannot be easily disturbed or disrupted because of this Chinese pumping in money and involved in the infrastructure development of Nepal. That could be simply a passing phenomenon, you know. So this dependency is not simply materially structured, it's also cultural in nature. So there is a possibility of retrieving whatever you lost among the Nepalese, forget about the government for the moment. That I don't think is very difficult for the government to do so. That's one. Second is, I think Bhutan. We don't have much problem with the Bhutanese as such, and this government somehow managed to, retrieve its credibility, or in a way, I say its presence in country like Maldives, following the democratic election out there in Malé, and also trying hard to do so in Sri Lanka. You know, the long-term challenge for the government, the policymakers is still there from Chinese side. The source is the same. Because ultimately, if you say South Asia is a kind of nomenclature given by Pentagon, by the American policymaker. It's essentially originally Indo-centric. It's an Indian subcontinent. So the countries around, you see, India in every sector, you know, India is dominant economically, culturally, historically. You know, they're all part and parcel of the Bharat Varsha once upon a time. So in a way, what we find in last more than a decade is the Chinese foray into South Asia, which is essentially originally identified with India. That's a very long-term challenge. But say the Pakistan is there, but the other countries are not easily or cannot be easily strayed away by China, or any extra regional power like America or UK for that matter. So is a huge challenge for India in the face of Chinese penetration or the Chinese foray into South Asia, because ultimately it is South Asia who happens to be the natural sphere of influence of India. And that is where the Chinese have put all the stake in this, to encircle India in such a way, or strategically, that China cannot compete India cannot compete with China globally. And that again explains why India has shown inclination to go along with America, for them with the Quad, to counter Chinese assertion and aggression. Again, it's gone.
One question is from Prabhat Kumar Jana. Tension is not only for India, but for the whole world now. So how can we escape from such tension? How do you see India-China Bhai-Bhai relations during this COVID era?
India-China, India-China, bhai bhai. You see, this narrative has come a full circle now. The bhai bhai was constructed with the purpose of uh, legitimizing the hegemonic position of China in South Asia and also globally. That is what they did vis-a-vis the West and also Indo-Pacific region. The India-China Bhai Bhai, or it's called Sin India, it refers to essentially the interstate economic relationship. The whole idea, the Chinese purpose was to defer the territorial dispute. Okay, but deferring doesn't mean resolving it. Deferring it indefinitely, and you continue with the economic relationship, which because benefited China in terms of its investment, in terms of the market it had in India for all the digitalized product, which this government thankfully has banned all the apps and other software things. So in a way, you'll find that the Bhai is a kind of camouflage to legitimize the continued hegemony of China in the region, particular and globally in general. And
Sir, we have another question from Saraswati Modi. What are the measures need to be taken to add India as a permanent member to the United Security Council?
that's a very general question, and obviously you need to get support from, first of all, as I say, the dominant power, global power, United States, UK, France, and they're all willy-nilly prepared to extend support to India as the permanent member. Now, the biggest obstacle for India to become the permanent member of United Nations Security Council is, of course, all of you know, China. So it is difficult to get China around on board to evolve a consensus. As I mentioned about the power transition taking place at the global systemic level. So it may take some time. But another problem, let me tell you very briefly here, that India has been scrupulously sticking to the policy called the strategic autonomy. So things are likely to change in the post-COVID global politics, structurally and ideationally. Oh God. So you'll have, it's gone again. So you'll
Okay,
have the new alliance coming up, emerging. Sorry.
Okay, sir. Another question is from
Yeah.
Sarat Chandra Pradhan. It is the obligation of each nation to respect the sovereignty of each and every nation, which is the fundamental objective of the UN. But being a permanent member of UN Security Council, China continues to violate this principle of UN. Do you think the time has come to out China from the Security Council?
So let me begin by saying, you see, each nation has the right to do so. Nobody denies that. But you need to have some points of concurrence also. So for the national interest of each individual state is concerned. But then ultimately, what is the biggest threat?
Hello, am I audible? Sarath Pradhan sir,
Yes, you're audible, but our resource person is not present in the platform due to the some technical problems. Please wait.
Please bear with us. Sir is trying to connect with us to respond to all of the questions.
sir, in meantime, if Prakash Mishra sir can hear me, I have a question, another question for him. If the organization allow me, then I shall ask the question to him.
Please.
Sir, am I audible to you, sir?
Yeah, you are audible.
Sir, being a layman, I am not claiming to be an academician or something like that. Being a layman, I understand that being a sovereign state, India has a legitimate right to be concerned about its external security, to be concerned about how to protect its frontiers. So, in this context, can we expect India to retain the right of hot pursuit against its unfriendly neighbors? Thank you, sir.
See,
This is my question.
there is nothing called a right to hot pursuit. I think it all depends on your capability. I think if you are capable enough of pursuing, then you have it. If you feel that you are not capable enough, then you really can't exercise, go on a hot pursuit. So it would largely depend on your military might, your intelligence capacity, and all those things. So we have done it twice in the past to good effect, and I am sure that we will do it in the future also.
Thank you, sir. Sir, is this the same thing that India did in the name of surgical strikes? They said that this is a preemptive, non-military strike against the terror camps in India, in Pakistan. Sorry.
Yes. I think that is what we exactly did. We got intelligence that they have been operating from a particular place. We had the capacity to go there. We had the capacity to strike. We did that and came back.
Let me just little bit
Thank you, sir.
elaborate this. In the hot pursuit, you're not in a way is a right. See, that's basically if a bilateral agreement with a neighboring country, then it is easy to do it on a common issue. For example, Iraq and Turkey over the issue of Kurdish separatists. So they had an agreement. So Turkish army can go inside 8 kilometers in pursuit of the Kurdish guerrillas who are constantly attacking the Turkish bases and the Turkish population. But then second is hot pursuit assertion of your power over your regional rivals. So there is always a risk involved. That is in terms of flare up of a military confrontation. So that could be the reason why majority of the countries decide to avoid that. And that is the reason why this government constantly said that it was non-military preemptive strike, to justify that particular action.
Thank you, sir. Another question from Rudra Narayan Das. What is the relevance of NAM 2.0 for India to maintain its strategic
And
autonomy today?
I, strategic autonomy.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, strategic autonomy is somehow related to the earlier policy of non-alignment. So it's very much reflected in the way we've been trying to balance our relation between the West on the one side and China, Russia on the other. May I request all of you to mute yourself, where there's a lot of echo. Just ensure that your audio system is muted. Yeah. So what I was trying to tell you that strategic autonomy basically refers to retaining the space for a country like India to formulate its response to the specific contingency and long-term policy, because India has its own set of objectives. That is, either to become an assertive global power. I refrain from calling it hegemonic global power.
Hello.
You're audible, sir.
Is it over?
So
No, sir, we
actually,
have one more.
Aswini, sir, actually, Professor Aswini Kumar Mohapatra has lost connection with us. He is trying to connect with us. We will just
Asha,
conclude within 5 minutes.
no,
So one more
you
question is left.
need me because I have to go somewhere. So I just wanted to check.
Uh, okay, sir, no issue.
Hello.
Or else we will be concluding within 5 minutes, sir.
If there are any other questions for me, I can answer and then go.
Okay, I will request Shubham sir to please check if other questions are there for Prakash Kumar Mishra that you can ask to him.
Madam, shall I go for introduction?
Okay, sir. Okay, so time has also passed, and there is some network issue with Professor Aswini Kumar Mohapatra. Uh, so now I would like to invite Mr. Shubham Das to conclude the session by giving vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I am honored and lucky to have the opportunity to give vote of thanks for this session. First of all, I would like to thank our esteemed guest, Professor Aswini Kumar Mohapatra, for his insightful deliberation on tension relations across the borderline. I would also like to thank Mr. Prakash Mishra for enlightening us on internal security challenges of India. I extend my hearty thanks to Dr. Vikram Kesari Jena, Director of CAD Odisha, for his friendly cooperation to organize this event. I would also like to express my profound gratitude to our Principal Professor Pallab Chakravarti for cooperation in organizing this webinar. I would also like to thank convener Professor Saroj Chandra Pradhan, coordinator Mr. Udanaran Das, co-coordinator Ms. Payal Agrawal, and Mr. Vaidar Das for their support and guidance to organize this event. I am happy to express my vote of thanks to all the participants, including lecturers, professors, students, civil society members, who have made this webinar such a resounding success for sparing their valuable time with us. The meeting is concluded now, and the next one will be at 4 p.m. today.
Thank you. The meeting is concluded now.